there's that major fire down there in LA. And a lot of it has to do with mismanagement. And it again boils down to fire and water and wind. So it's been interesting. I've been listening to the news and watching YouTube videos on this LA fire thing. And it brings to mind that how Mother Nature defeats humankind every time it wants to raise its violent head. Down in LA they have these fires that weren't helped by what looks like mismanagement of public resources, and all these politicians that talk about, and we learn from this and we learn from that, and I don't think so. You know, LA just burned because of mismanagement. They weren't prepared. As I recall, it's called the Great Fire of Seattle, and it took place in like 1889, and had to do with a carpenter shop, and the guy was heating glue in a can over a fire, and it boiled over, and it burned like 26 blocks of Seattle. There were some good things that came about from that fire. Like when they rebuilt Seattle downtown, they used brick buildings, not wood. And that was pretty early in times where most structures were built of wood or stones. And they raised it up 20 feet. So they built the new downtown Seattle, which is not as big as downtown Seattle now, but it's the waterfront and it's up the hills there, maybe over to the freeway. They raised everything up about 20 feet. And the good news about that is that Seattle was built on tide flats, I think. I know that they had to raise it up because the city was too low, and it would be inundated with water, salt water. And a lot of that stuff stunk to high heaven at low tide because there was kelp and all that started rotting at low tide because it was high and dry. And so the Seattle was not ready for a fire. And that's a lot like LA, Los Angeles, in the fire of 2025, where the fire was not ready for the fire. You know, the infrastructure was just shit. They talk about all this water not being available, but I don't know when the water mains were actually installed, but I'll bet you a dime to a donut that, well, actually now you have to go $5 to a donut. That's an old saying too. The water mains are just this big, and they need to be this big for all those people. And they haven't been working on the infrastructure. And then they had a reservoir with over 100 million gallons of water that hadn't been repaired for a year or so, and it was empty. And they say it wouldn't have made any difference, but when you're running out of water and you need water pressure, you know, the weight of the water is what gives you pressure. I'm not a hydrologist, but I understand gravity and pressure on water, and that's what pushes water out, and that's why they build these water towers in the towns in the Midwest. That's not just to store water. That's so up high they have the weight of the water, and that's what creates the pressure that goes to all the homes and all the infrastructure and all the toilets that have to flush. And so anyway, what was I getting at? So anyway, a lot of destruction, and it was terrible. I think so far the count is about 25 people lost their lives, but thousands lost their homes, and there was an insurance debacle where insurance companies came in, and not long before this fire, with Santa Ana winds at 100 miles an hour or whatever it was. I mean, these fires create their own wind anyway, so even if the Santa Ana winds were 40 miles an hour, when you throw them across a fire and you get the updrafts and all that, I mean, it doubles. Whatever it is, it at least doubles. And I'm not an authority on that either. I just talk out my ass sometimes. So what I can kind of see the good part of this, if you don't factor in all the destruction and the people's lives that are absolutely destroyed, that didn't have insurance because the insurance companies were pulling out or increasing their rates by 5 times. Good news is they get to see their politicians in their best light, which is really a shitty light, and they have shitty leaders down there. I don't know why, and it's happening in Seattle too, but it's such a liberal area. And, to a certain degree, if you discount, I don't mean discount, but if you take away that people's lives were destroyed and they died and all that, I think California has been out of control in a lot of ways. I mean, all the freaks and homeless and all that, and you can steal $950 out of a store and it's not a crime unless it goes over that amount. And they've kind of bred the thoughts that looting is okay because you can steal from stores and it's okay. So where these fires are taking place, there's massive looting. So just like with the Seattle fire, even though 25 square blocks, I don't even think blocks are square, I think they're longer than they are wide. But what do I know? Anyway, the good news out of the Seattle fire is that they rebuilt a little bit better, a little bit higher. The health conditions were better, and they figure over 1 million rodents died in that fire. So they got rid of a lot of rats. I imagine that's what they mean by rodents. So now we'll go back to the LA fires. Based on what I can see and the scrambling that politicians and DEI and all that are doing, and the woke community, they're all scrambling. and maybe they will be just not killed, but their movements destroyed, because I think they're kind of rats. So just like in Seattle, where they got rid of 1 million rats, if LA can get rid of those politicians like that Gavin Newsom, who's just a used car salesman with greased back hair and all these body gestures, and he's spent a lot of time in front of a mirror learning all these gestures that don't make any sense to me. Or that Karen Bass, the mayor, who, when they caught her at the airport coming back from some birthday party from Africa, if she didn't have a scriptwriter, she couldn't even do an interview. She looked like a deer in headlights, or maybe a rat in headlights. So on a national level, this Newsom guy, I think it was their best next prospect for president of the United States. I think his career, hopefully, is finished, even though he talks and gestures and all that, and there's destruction behind him and he's smiling about it. I think that maybe we got rid of some rats, and hopefully we can move on and build better, and people that are just half brain dead from all this propaganda that's been spread everywhere, maybe they'll wake up and actually think about what they're voting for. And if they vote these kind of people back in, I say let LA burn again. Just hopefully the good people will get out and maybe the rats will be burned. There's plenty of those down there. Anyway, that's enough of that rant.